The basic education advocacy group Equal Education says it has noted the appointment of a new incumbent, Siviwe Gwarube, in the role of Minister of Basic Education in South Africa. The organisation says the incumbent will be expected to account first to the millions of learners, parents, teachers, communities and members and the South African public she serves, and to prioritise the delivery of equal and quality education for all. Equal Education Secretary-General Noncedo Madubedube and the Executive Director of the National Professional Teachers Organisation of South Africa, that's NAPTOSA, Basil Manuel, both join us to share their views on what needs to be prioritised. Thanks, both of you. Good to have you here this morning.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us, Leanne.
Always such a pleasure. Noncedo, let me begin with you. When you heard the name of the new basic Minister of Education being announced, what was your first opinion? Do you think she's up for the job?
So for a few days before the announcement, we were hearing that the education minister is likely to be from the Democratic Alliance. And already at that point, we were worried because we have an experience with the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape as Equal Education. And some of the things that have concerned us in the Western Cape is just the combative nature of the education ministry at province level here. So one of the things we've called for in our public statement, and please, everyone that's watching, please go look on our social media platforms and read with us, because we'll need all South Africans to support equal education and learners over the next couple of years. So we were concerned because we were worried about the combative nature around communications and working with civil society actors, especially social movements. We were concerned because the combative nature extends to the admission and the reckoning of school admissions crises in urban provinces. So here in the Western Cape, we eventually had to go to court with the Western Cape Department of Education to compel them to place learners in May of 2024. It's a crisis that's going to be ongoing in the Western Cape, likely in Gauteng as well. So we wanted to build some kind of jurisprudence, some kind of action plan proactively with government to make sure that's addressed. The last of our concerns is that in the Western Cape, there's sort of a quasi-charter school model. So a public-private partnership of collaboration and donor-funded schools that we've struggled to get the MEL for. So we wanted to know if you're going to introduce private actors, into the education system, how do we monitor that the reason for them being introduced in these schools, typically black and brown, rural township schools, is in fact conducive and supports their learning and supports teachers, as a matter of fact. But we've struggled to get public information on the monitoring of this rollout. Instead, what's happened is that, we've been met with combative responses around why we're looking for this information. And one of the things we've called for, again through a legal process, because how else do you talk to your government nowadays, is asking them to first make clear to us what are the regulations that will govern the way that these private actors enter the education system. So when people look online and look at our statement, young folk are saying to government, regardless of who's a minister, but to the minister in particular now, including the deputy minister, to please remember that education, basic education in particular, must and is a public good. And we as young folk in South Africa, as part of this democratic dispensation, we insist.
Okay. We've got your views on this, and they're very strong views and opinions. I'll come back to you. But Basil, if I can bring you into this, because Basil, you know, this is something we all need to work on together from the outset, because we're talking basic education. There are severe problems in that department. Many schools have major issues around the country, and we need to see these fixed as a matter of urgency. But my question is, and the same that I asked to Equal Education, is this the right person for the job? What are your impressions, and what was your immediate reaction hearing who our new basic education minister is?
Leanne, to be honest, I have no clue who the lady is. The first thing I had to do was to go on Google and find out a little bit of information about the person themselves. But of course we know what the party is and what the party stands for. And Noncedo is right. There are some unfortunate statements that have been made, but of course not by this particular individual. So our point of departure has been, we are now sitting with a person. We've got to make this work. and we are going into the relationship with an open mind. But our open mind is not a blank check. It is to say there are many things that need to be fixed. There are things that have gone right, that need to be built on. But there are also things that we've had as evergreen problems. And those, some of them you have mentioned, the overcrowded classrooms, the poor infrastructure, the fact that we just don't seem to be getting the foundation phase right. And of course, the big issue, now that we are sitting on the cusp of the introduction of the Bella Bill, and knowing that the party has been one of the rejectionists, that we want to say, where are we now? What are we going to do? There are good things in the bill. We fought for 10 years against many strange things, but we've now embraced what we think is a workable bill, and we want to see the good implemented, particularly when it comes to the introduction of grade R as a permanent part of the initial learning phase. It is extremely important, but one that is fraught with a lot of hurdles, such as infrastructure, such as teachers, and also don't forget those millions of primarily gogos that have kept the wheels of this economy turning, and we can't just throw them out into the streets and forget what they did for the greater economy over the years.
Yeah.
But we're going in with an open mind.
Yeah, yeah.
We are not party political, but we are political in our very nature. So the fact that the person comes from whichever party doesn't really bother us, provided that you are part of Project South Africa. There is a line of march which says, this is what we want to achieve. We don't want to be part of seeing that a political party's agenda is being achieved outside of what is the greater good of South Africa.
And it certainly has. I mean, you know, when you look at the DA, they're the first to criticize most things about basic education. And this has been a reality. I mean, the pass rate being one of them. And I mean, when we look at the pass rate here in matric, and we obviously know that this doesn't qualify you for studying on to higher education, but that basic pass rate is being criticized all the time. 3 subjects with a minimum of 40% and a further 3 subjects passed at 30%. Equal education, let's come to you. I mean, this has been a big bugbear of the DA. We hear about it all the time. What do you think about this? Do you think that they're going to act on their criticism? Is that one thing that we will see changing? Is perhaps that standard pass rate moving higher, and the things that the DA have always criticized about current basic education, think they'll be tackling those?
I speak to everyone. I think we agree with Basil in the sense that we've got a new minister now, we need to make it work. One of the things that we're calling for here is collaboration. The system is complex and it's massive. So I don't know what Siviwe may want to start with, but I want to just share 2 things. The first is that while we're noting all of these things coming out of a DA-led education ministry at this province, our members woke up in the Eastern Cape very excited. I didn't know that Siviwe is from King Williamstown. So young folks in the Eastern Cape said, there's the Minister of Basic Education, a young black woman that looks but doesn't sound like us. Now, that's the first bit. So we're cautiously watching and hope for the best. The second thing is that what we would ask her to prioritize. The norms and standards of school infrastructure, I don't know if South Africans know this, have been amended. What the department has done is that they've taken out the time frames in that law. So people remember we've always come onto the show and said, by 2016, we were meant to have fully eradicated all plain pit latrines, for example, and the timelines continue. Now the department is proposing that 12 months after the gazetting of this version that is amended, they will propose a plan to South Africans on ways to eradicate the backlog of inappropriate and unsafe school infrastructure. Now that's shoddy. So we're asking the minister to please reinstate timelines and timeframes back onto the law for school infrastructure, and then prioritize the full eradication of these plain pit latrines at least by the end of this next financial year.
Yeah. I want to. Before you move on, I just want to quiz you. I want to quiz you on what you said about the minister being born in King Williamstown. She's an Eastern Cape girl, raised by her grandmother, went through the schooling system there, and has managed to get herself into a massive position. Does it matter what she sounds like? Is it fair to criticize her on how she sounds? Is that really something we should even be focusing in on, as opposed to focusing in on the work that she does and the expectations from her?
And I'm talking about what she sounds like. I mean her policy positions. So we're looking at the DA
fair enough.
manifesto.
Fair enough. That's okay,
Yeah.
because it sounded like you were speaking about she doesn't sound like us. So that worried me a little bit, because right now I think it's policy positions. It's fixing something that
Yes.
truly is broken for a lot of people. For children that are going and they still have pit latrines, they don't have classrooms, they don't have infrastructure. I mean, when we look at the things, and one of the massive things that we hope that this minister will be able to tackle, and Basil, I don't know if you want to talk about it, is the massive dropout rate. Because you see the amount of young children that begin in grade R or double R, but then who matriculate, those numbers, where do those missing children go?
Leanne, and those missing children are your problem and my problem,
Yeah.
and the problem of every South African citizen. We see them sitting on the street corners. We see them getting up to all sorts of things. And of course, it's primarily the boy child that we also have to look at. Leanne, it has been a crisis that has dogged us for many, many years. We've raised it more than 20 years ago. And of course, we haven't really been able to retain. And the question is, why? Part of the problem is, of course, the fact that we've had a very, very academic curriculum where we haven't really catered for the child who's not perfectly academic. And hopefully, with the current curriculum shift, we are going to see some things happening there. But that has been altogether too slow, the so-called three streams model. We haven't even properly formulated the policy. And we want to see that sped up. But we also want to see that as we are adapting the curriculum, and Leanne, I'm using the word adapt very, very cautiously, because we are not calling for a change of the curriculum. We are calling for adaptation, because our curriculum is not bad in itself. We've got to start catering for skills of the 21st century, skills that take us into the fourth and fifth industrial revolution. We've got to do that. But at the same time, we are saying we can't do nonsense like trying to implement a new subject in grade 1, 2, and 3 when we haven't mastered writing, when we haven't mastered reading and math. What we've got to do is integrate that into the existing curriculum where there is space. We can't take away from subjects that we are already battling with. And Leanne, I think you and I spoke a few months ago about the disjuncture between what people train for and what they eventually end up teaching. In the foundation phase, it's critical that there are a large swath of people that need to be retrained as foundation phase teachers, because they were not initially trained as foundation phase teachers, but find themselves there. And they're good people in themselves. But I can tell you as a former principal of a primary school that if you can't teach reading, if you find yourself in grade 5, it doesn't matter what anybody says to you. You still won't be able to teach reading unless you are taught how to teach reading. So these are the things that we want to concentrate on. Not only the matriculants. We have this really, really driven issue around matric, but it is the foundation that we must fix from grade R, and if that works properly, the rest will work.
Okay.
And then the dignity of our children.
That's most important. I mean, anybody that you're a young kid, you need the dignity to go into an environment that is conducive for learning and breeding for understanding, because it's a major problem. Basil, final word from you, a final word, then I'm coming to you, Noncedo, because we've got to end the interview. Are you prepared to work with the Minister, Basil, as the unions? Because that's always been a worry we do know that there's been issues with regard to some of the appointments, particularly that she is a member of the DA. Are you prepared to work hand in hand with this minister to make this work?
Absolutely, Leanne.
Okay.
We are in it for South Africa.
Good.
And it's a legacy of Angie that she has worked very well with the unions. We've disagreed a lot, but she has worked well. And we want to build on that because we need one another.
Indeed. Noncedo, you have the final word very quickly. I've got about 30 seconds.
Written to the minister, we hope she'll reply and agree to meet with us. Can she please help us deal with the budget cuts in the education system? Plow back that money, fight treasury, join us in advocacy to get you more money in there. And the last story is we do need a plan, a proper or regulated plan around reading for meaning. Infrastructure, reading, money. Mandla.
There you go. Those are them.
Thank you,
Three
Noncedo.
short demands. Thank you to both of you for joining us here on the program. It's going to be a long journey ahead of us, but as I'm enjoying the message from both of you, it's new, it's happening, we need to work together, and especially for basic education. It is the primary focus for the children and the future of this country. Joining us was, of course, Basil Manuel of NAPTOSA, and also from Equal Education, Noncedo Madubedube. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very, very much.